Hey guys, it's Godburs here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 67th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So I'm pretty sure this is the first post-2010s instrumental album I've talked about, but that isn't remotely due to a lack of beat tapes or fully instrumental projects. People like Tall Black Guy, Odyssey, Blockhead, and The Alchemist are just a few of the talented producers who've more than helped carry the torch over to the new millennium. There's also amazing instrumental projects like Untrue by Burial or Cosmogramma by Flying Lotus that utilize sampling and other aspects of hip hop culture, yet fall a bit more on the electronic music side. Many of these guys are heavily inspired by pioneers like Jay Dilla or Nujabes, and they all go about keeping that soulful but occasionally lo-fi style alive and well, even through their own unique means. Knowledge is someone who's managed to carve out their own specific sound and production style, which usually includes drums that skip and kind of stutter. I first became familiar with him through some of the work he did with Earl Sweatshirt throughout the 2010s, but I think a lot of people got introduced to Knowledge through No Worries, the project he has with Anderson .Paak, where they blend hip hop with R&B and neo soul. That collaboration helped him become an even more well-rounded artist, as producing and engineering a more contemporary album that has singing and live instrumentation is almost another art form entirely. But so is an instrumental album in a sense, because a lot of hip hop listeners get so used to hearing rappers over beats that listening to a beat tape for the first time can be kind of jarring. I do think there's a slight difference between beat tape and instrumental album, with a beat tape in my mind being more of a mixtape of beats meant to be rapped over, while an instrumental album like Donuts is more its own story and experience. To me, HUD Dreams falls into that second category where you definitely could rap over these beats if you wanted to, but they're deliberately short and to the point and is intended to be listened to in one sitting, which is how I'd recommend going about this album. The briefness of these tracks is probably the one aspect I'm a bit torn on because I could see exactly what Knowledge was going for, but there's certain loops I enjoy so much that I wish they stretched out a little bit longer. For example, Time and Tide is arguably my favorite instrumental in the entire project, but at just 48 seconds, I can't help but find myself wishing it was just a couple minutes longer. However, it isn't all negatives in the track length department, because most of the beats running for less than a minute keeps you on your toes, and you'll never stay on any given idea or sound long enough to get bored of it, which again, on one hand, makes some of the songs slightly underdeveloped, but on the other, it makes them exciting and fresh, which is a big benefit for an album like HUD Dreams, because despite the instrumentals being as short as they are, the overall runtime is still nearly 40 minutes due to the 26-song track list. But honestly, it feels a lot shorter in a good way, because Knowledge covers so much ground and the way the beats transition from one to the next is so clean. The first time I listened to this project, I just put it on and went about my listening experience, not knowing how short each track was, and I remember thinking I was still on the same song at various points, but in reality, I was three tracks further. It isn't like one just fades out, then the next song starts, and the next beat fades in. This is practically God level blending and playing with the same sample across two different songs with totally unique outcomes. There's certain exceptions for the short track lengths where we get a beat that's 2 or even 3 minutes, but even still they wind and build as to not be just a stagnant loop. Part of the reason this album's aesthetic has always been so dope to me is the killer album cover, which I'm always a sucker for. If there's an artist I've never heard of, but they have an insane creative album cover, I'll usually give them a listen. For me, it plays a big part in the album experience because it's the picture that's in your head when you first put it on, and if it's done well, it can perfectly match and even build on the music. This is one of those covers where it's just so mysterious and foreboding it can't help but catch your eye, and the black-orange color scheme couldn't be more perfect. But what really gives this LP its backbone is the selection of samples Knowledge pulled from for these atmospheric beats. They're soulful and jazzy to begin with, but then Knowledge chops and rearranges them into instant earworms that only ever disappoint you when they end. He really raised the bar in terms of crafting an experience with nothing but instrumentals, opposed to just slapping together some old forgotten beats that nobody wanted to use. Another thing that likens him to legends like the Avalanches or even DJ Shadow is how they're all able to tell you about their influences, interests, and even personalities to a degree without ever actually opening their mouths. They're the kind of artists who come to my mind the second I hear some goober talking about how sampling is just stealing and isn't an art form. While HUD Dreams may not be using 5,000 samples like those other ones, it wasn't made in the older days those other albums were, where it was still more of a Wild West for sampling. It isn't really about that anyway. I think whatever amount of reference material Knowledge used was the ideal amount, and it's about the musical journey he created through the art of sampling and drum programming. My three favorite beats on here are hard to pick since there's so many, but if I had to choose, they'd be the first track that has such a long, ridiculous title I can't even begin to try to pronounce it, as well as Time and Tide and No Flowers. And for honorable mentions, I have Take Care of It, From Nowhere, The Troll, Let You Leave or Geeked Up, Far Away, Only Journey Tro, Ain't It Over, That Body, Flying Lizards, My Desire or Fort Win, Van Nuys, Never Ending, Dem Screets Facts, and OK OK. Thank you for watching my 67th video. Next time we're talking about an album that came out in 2015 and wasn't nearly as talked about and widely praised as it should have been in my eyes. So check in for that video, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite beats are off this cinematic journey Knowledge created. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.